Hello, Dr. Sirking. Thank you for being here. Good morning. Larry the Golf Dad. Happy to have you here. We're gonna talk all about feet. I know you had some specific questions, so if you want to throw those in the comments, I'm happy to try to get those specific things answered. I also have some stuff planned. So if there's anything that you really want me to make sure I try to go over, please let me know. Okay. Playing with camera angles today. I'm doing it on a laptop instead of my desktop. And there we go. Well, kind of. I'm sure nobody wants to be looking at the back of my phone, but that's all right. Thank you for being here. I mean, as a runner, I know that's not the primary thing you do, but you do love to run. I know your feet take an absolute beating. Um, there was a period of my life where I would test myself every couple months to see if I could run a 5K in my barefoot shoes, whether on concrete or on grass. And I mean, I could do it, but man, my feet, it would take me like a week and a half to recover. Gencio, hello, good morning. All right, let's talk feet. So, feet are obviously our connection to the ground. That's a number one. So, when you have spent, ideally, you spend most of your life on your feet, right? So, forgive the SpongeBob Band-Aids. I tripped over some Legos. So you can look at the wear pattern of your feet as well as the wear pattern of your shoes, and you can see where most of the pressure hits, right? If you've got a really low arch, you might notice a little bit more pressure here. Tommy D, what's up? Thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions about feet and hips, please throw them in the comments. Um, so looking at the wear pattern on the bottom of your feet, you can tell based on where your calluses are how Jensio, I do not need a video editor right now. Right now, I am my video editor. So, I mean, I do the best that I can. I'm a one-man show, so my wife helps sometimes, but for the most part, it's just me. Um, I appreciate that though. So you can tell based on where your calluses are, where your foot is taking the majority of the beating. So when I was wearing barefoot shoes all the time, I had the biggest callus right between my second and third toe on the ball of my foot. That was where like 99% of my callus was because as I was walking, I would spin and I would basically bypass my big toe. Since wearing Brooks, like running shoes, more often, I have gotten more to the outside edge of my heel, a little bit more callousing there, and a lot more callousing through my big toe, which means I'm actually like passing through my big toe as I'm walking, which is a good thing. That's what you should be. You should be going heel to toe as you walk. Running is a little bit different. Running, I mean, there's a couple different types of stride running. Um, but you can be more of a forefoot, midfoot runner, which is really efficient. You use a lot of your calf in order to do that, and your hamstrings and your glutes. Um, I would not recommend being a heel striker, excuse me, just because that puts a lot of force on your bone and it's a lot of impact on your heel. So people who heel strike, like heavily heel strike, I noticed that they've got a huge callus on their heels, of course, but they also end up with a lot of shin splints. And that's because when they land, they're landing so hard like this, all of these muscles are shortening, like because they're trying to pull their big toe up. And then as they land, they're being forced to do this to push off. And they're resisting the whole time. So you get like an insane workout of your anterior tib, but you also get like a pulling almost away from the bone. And that's where you just end up with like really, really sore shins. And in that, those sore shins will stop you from running again because you are going to wait for them to get really, you have to wait for them to stop hurting gratuitously. And then if they're still hurting when you go run, chances are they're going to get re-injured. So that's one thing. You can kind of study what your feet are doing. The thing that's interesting though is that you may find different wear patterns on both feet. So like if you notice on this guy, this edge, I don't know if you can see it. Yep, you can see it there. Okay. So this edge is not as defined left to right. It's hard to hold up both feet. My right side, you can see I put more force through there. My arch on my right side is a little bit higher and a little bit more rigid than it is on my left because there's a whole reason and we'll go into that. But really I put so much weight on my right foot and as a result, and it's the outside edge of my right foot, so my arch becomes a little bit higher and a little bit more rigid because I wasn't for a long time being able to actually like pronate through that part of my foot. So on this, it's not as defined. I'm doing a little bit more now, and I'm trying to push myself over to make sure that I am, I'm not pushing myself over, but like putting more weight into my heel and rolling through my big toe more, and exploring more of the outside edge of this foot because previously I just didn't. I wouldn't put that much weight on my left foot. I would cheat through my hip. And so this arch just kind of fell a little bit lower. But you can see that the calluses that I do have are less. I used to blow through socks right here. And then I would, like, that was where my socks would wear out first. And then I would start wearing through the insole of my shoe in that same spot. So while that's all very personal, that's intended to help you understand that, like, there are ways to figure out what your feet are doing regularly, and recognize where most of the work is being done in your foot. When you put that much load through your foot, especially whether you're running or not, your feet are going to take a huge beating. And in that, you have to be able to take tension off of them. And if you're living your entire life in your forefoot with your knees locked out, I'll do a really exaggerated version of this. So let's see if I can create enough space between the treadmill. Actually, treadmill might be or it might not be a bad idea. Although this one's takes a lot to wake up. We'll wake it up to see if we can use it. All right, so if you're spending all of your time with your knees locked and your weight forward, pelvis forward, all you can see is my crotch on the Zoom. Sorry. I'll back it up in a second. So when you spend your whole time here with all of your weight forward, which I'm willing to bet, and based on what I've seen with my clients, this is a lot of what happens. A lot of you. You're gripping the ground all the time. You have to be. You're death gripping the ground. And in that, you're putting a lot of stress on the connective tissues of your feet, right? Every time you go forward, you're putting stress on the connective tissues of your feet. You're also death gripping the ground. And sometimes that looks like this, where your toes are like curled under gripping. And other times that looks like this, where you're kind of hammer toeing the ground. I don't know if you can see the hammer toe. What we want to be able to do to take pressure off of that is hang out in our heels. You notice that the arch on my right or my left foot is going to raise up a bit. The arch on my right foot is going to go down. And that's what they both need to be able to do. Because if I go here, arch on my right foot goes up, arch on my left foot goes down. So looking at that side to side, if you're somebody who has really high arches, you're probably not pronating a ton, which you do need to do. And you're probably putting a lot of pressure on the outside edges of your feet. You're going to accumulate tension in your pinky toes, outside edge, ring toe, second to the last toe. Um, and then you're also probably gripping the ground a lot because the ground feels very, I would like to say, the ground feels very far away. I know that sounds weird because your feet are on the ground, but as far as like where your body senses your weight is, if it feels like you have to fall to pronate, and it feels like you have to use this in order to pronate massively, then you are more likely to be beating up your hip, your low back, your pelvis to try to accomplish foot. And if you can't do foot, you're probably not going to do hip very well. Let's see if I can get this started. So we're going to do some ministry of, I don't know if you'll know this reference, some of you will. I love it. The majority of my followers are from the millennial generation. Probably still going to cut my head off on the Zoom. So, yeah, should have switched to the other one. What? Sometimes technology, it's a thing. All right. So we're going to keep going on our foot discussion while we're waiting for the treadmill to start. So when your feet are death gripping the ground, your first contact with the floor is so tight and restricted that you can't actually expect the rest of your system to chill out because it's like threat from the minute your foot hits the ground. And if you're somebody who I heard this phrase yesterday from a chiropractor that I absolutely love. If you can't get out of bed and wash your toes right away, like so just wash your toes without any back pain and be like feeling like you have to warm up before you can wash your toes, that's not a good sign. That's a sign that your whole system is very, very tight. It's restricted. It's hanging on for dear life. And I mean, that's kind of its job, right? Your nervous system's job is to create security for you. So how do we create security? Oh, kids, good to see you. I hope your day's off to a good start, or I guess you're a lot farther into your day than I am. So knowing that your feet are strong and capable is going to be one of the ways that your hips don't have to hang on so hard. And then knowing that your hips are strong and capable is going to be a way that your feet don't have to hang on so hard. So being able to contribute or to go from both and also not be hanging on so tightly the minute you get out of bed. So you can bend down, tie your shoes, wash your feet, all of that stuff. It's nice to have you guys here. If you have any questions about feet and hips, I mean, these are not as big of issues as they might be. But if you have any questions, please shoot them in the comments. I'm happy to try to, as I said before, and help you however I can. So we're going to go through a little bit of foot mobility stuff just to get your feet moving better, reduce any inflammation you have in your feet, and then allow things to move a little bit better so that we can then train. All right. So I've got to slide the other camera forward. Okay, got to tilt this guy down. Okay. So, sorry, treadmill trouble. Gonna start. We don't need right now. Okay, so with your weight relatively even and in your heels, I want you to try, without using your hands, to lift your big toe. Without scrunching the other toes, just lift big toe. And you're going to notice that it's probably going to go this way a little bit. So try to shift your weight over the center of your foot and lift big toe. See if you can go straight up. Do that 5 times. Just lift big toe. From there, you're going to try to lift the other 4. So push down through your big toe and raise the other 4 toes without collapsing in through your arches. Just big toe. I'm holding onto my hips because the first thing I like to do, I always try to do when I'm doing this, is I use my fingers. I cheat with my fingers to try to accomplish toe. So I have to like hang on to something to say, no, don't do it. Just toes. All right, now lift everybody up. So now it's going to shift your weight back into your heels. Just tap your big toe. You can see I'm still using my other guys, but that's all right. Just tap big toe. From there, try to splay your toes as wide as you can. Pinky toe, play the piano all the way down to big toe. Up, splay them, pinky toe, all the way down to big toe. One last time, all the way down to big toe, right? So that's your foot warm up. You need something? 1 second, guys. I'm recording right now and live. Sultan and Joey, thank you for being here. If you have any questions about feet and hips, please go ahead and drop them in the comments. All right, so that's our foot warm up, right? That's the first thing. And what you want to be able to notice is whether or not you can flex through your big toe or if your body needs to splay out in order to load into your forefoot. Can you go forward and up without your feet gripping the ground as hard as you can? So one of the ways to ensure that you're going up in an even way is to take heel, put a ball, or in this case, I'm using a yoga block, so that's what I've got here, and squeeze together as you go up. So in this case, I'm loading my feet as evenly as I can. I'm trying to keep my arches nice and strong. I'm gripping the ground slightly through my big toe. And I'm very slowly going up. And you can see certain things. My body's kind of doing a little dance back and forth. We really want to try to go as far, as straight up as we can, pushing into the block with our heels. We don't want to be using our knees because, again, that's working our way up the system instead of coming together as we do this. So right now we're just focusing on strengthening the foot itself. All right, let's do one more like that. Push together, push into the ground. So we're not just folding forward. We're not doing a Michael Jackson. We're climbing up our feet and then slowly coming back down. Saw a question. Okay. One of your feet causes her feet to be locked in one position. Huh. That is a good question. If you want to, you can shoot me a video or a photo, and I can try to give some more specific input to that issue, but I'll give a couple more exercises to mobilize foot, just and see if this is useful for you. All right. So in this, we're going to take one step back and we're going to work actually ankle. So holding shin in place, draw the biggest circle that you can with your big toe. Imagine you're holding a Sharpie between your toes. Try to draw the biggest circle that you can. Right? And what you'll notice is that your body's going to kind of want to do this as you do it. And you've probably done circles in the past. Stephanie, thank you for stopping by. Ben, voice actor. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions about feet, I am happy to help. All right, let's do the other side. Big circles. Big circles with that. And then you can go both directions. Just making sure that you're not, using your shin, using your hip. We're really focused on feet, right? Trying to use that ankle to the best of our ability. Good. One more good one. Right? So this is the idea that we're using each individual component on its own. Okay? The next thing that we can play with is a big toe specific stretch. So in that big toe specific stretch, I'm going to bring the yoga block back so you can kind of see. I'm going to stand on this because obviously it's going to move. What I want is just big toe to be going up. So I don't know, you can see it. So in that you can play with depending on how much of a stretch you need, but ultimately I want you to go into this easy. You first sign of stretch is where you stop right now. You don't need to go knee bent far forward as far as you can, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to stretch all the way up through here onto those side of the Achilles. If you hang out here I'm not going to do the full time, but if you do this for 2 minutes and then gently squeeze like you're pressing the gas pedal with your big toe, gently is the operative word. If you squeeze too hard, you're going to piss something off right away. You're going to make something very angry right away. So slowly squeeze through that big toe and then try to lift big toe. It doesn't actually have to move, but try to lift big toe and you can ease deeper into that stretch. And what that's going to end up doing is it's going to strengthen that tissue in a more stretched out position. Yeah, so as far as a anterior ankle impingement, like front side closing ankle joint pain here, this can help. If it's as a result of stuff on the bottom of your foot not stretching, this can help a lot. If you're just getting a ton of jamming, the ankle cars will help a lot. And then if you're getting a ton of front side jamming, we actually would go with more stretching like this and like the ankle sprain almost stretches before I would go straight forward. Hayden, I know you love your barefoot shoes too. So let's do the other side. We're going to stretch our other big toe. So if you did left first, now we're going to do right. So one of the ways to do this that works really well is like a door frame. So as you go into this stretch, try to find this spot on the ground before you crank up the big toe. Right? You can ease into it. And again, your needs are going to be different left to right. It's a normal thing for one side to want one thing and one side to want another. So hanging out in this stretch again for 2 minutes, and then we're going to do our squeeze. So go ahead and start to push into the block. You can use a ball, a rock, like whatever you have to pull that big toe up. And if you really don't have anything, then you can do something like this. And just pick up big toe, right? What you want to make sure you do though is put like a little bit of pressure into this spot. Here, I'm gonna get closer. A little bit of pressure into here as you pull big toe up. So you don't just collapse the foot, you actually stretch the connective tissue. Sorry, I know for those of you who are grossed out by feet, you're in the wrong live because we're talking a lot about feet today. And the Zoom crowd is just looking at my lower half. Let's see, maybe I'll move them over here. That's slightly less, but then you can't see my feet. Okay. Okay. So we've stretched big toes, we've activated our feet really well, we've got things nice and warm. We're gonna look at, we're not done with feet, we're just going to look at hips as a contribution before we move on to the exercise that I'm going to have you do. So most people go too far with their hips when they're stretching. And what I mean by too far is they expect this to be the stretch they need to be doing. And while I am getting a stretch, what I'm actually doing is I've opened up my pelvis and I'm not actually stretching my butt anymore. So the stretch for my hip actually started right around there, right before this happens. If pelvis is cranking over, you've gone too far. So if you wanted to find a stretch like that, I'm going to use the treadmill as like my stage. So we want to find hip external rotation stretch on our right side. So a sideline position like this will help to make sure that we're not letting that hip dump out as we go up. And we slowly climb into more external rotation. What we're going to need, though, is we're going to climb up like this. And if you're feeling yourself limited by this back leg, you can shift it back or even forward. And go to the spot right when you feel that stretch. So external rotation is one of the biggest things that people try to do, whether it's pigeon pose or just cranking their ankle up. And they're like, my hips feel tight, so I want to get to the biggest possible stretch I can. That's not an actual solution, because you just end up bypassing the thing that actually needs to happen, which is hip internal rotation. So hip internal rotation is the thing that most people miss out on and most people are missing. If this isn't you and you can collapse your knee all the way to the ground with your pelvis square, don't worry about this part. You can do some of the things we're going to do, but not necessarily do as deep of a stretch, because you're probably not going to find one. So hanging out in this position, again, it's 2 minutes. There's a whole reason for the 2 minutes, and we can talk through that. But ultimately, like, let's focus more on what's happening hip and feet. If you want to pronate your foot, as in like the arch goes down and you roll through your big toe, you're going to need hip internal rotation to do that. Because if we are going to walk through our stride, well, let's finish this, because I don't want to have you get out of position and then get back up and then do it again. So we'll finish this, but basically as you walk, you go from external rotation to internal rotation, pass through big toe, and then as that foot swings out in front of you, it goes back into external rotation. So you kind of do this as you walk. And that's happening in your hip joint. I'm pointing at my shoulder, but it's in your hip joint. And if you don't have access to one of those, you're going to walk in the other one. And that, like, extremes are being like duck-footed and pigeon-toed. Duck-footed is toes turned out. Pigeon-toed is toes turned in. Both of those are relatively dysfunctional because they come with their own compensations. You're either stuck one way or stuck another, and your body is just going to keep going because that's what you're telling it to do. So now let's start to squeeze where we feel that stretch. So we're trying to push out that way, right? If you're cramping on the front side of your hip, try to tuck your hips underneath as you do this. Push out this way, like you're trying to, my hands are on my knee, and I'm pushing into my hand with my hip, right? I'm squeezing that stuff. Holding, big deep breath, and then squeeze your inner thigh stuff and try to pull yourself down. So I'm holding and I'm trying to close this gap between the ground and my knee. Squeeze, 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 slowly release. And my hip is going to cramp. Cramping is normal. Sorry, I'm going to look at the comments real quick. Oh. So you can do this here too. There's a lot of different ways to find this stretch, but this is one of the simplest and easiest ways, right? We're pushing our knee towards the ground. We're keeping our pelvis tucked. We're not letting ourselves roll forward, because the goal is not actually to get to the ground. It's just to hang out in this position. Okay, so your right side, if you are somebody who's living like this, you need internal rotation on both sides. That's just part of what happens. Left side is probably going to be worse at internal rotation. Left side is going to be worse in internal rotation. And just because it doesn't do it as much. Typically, the right hip does a lot more internal rotation. If your arch is high, it's on your right side, it's likely that your right hip likes to live in internal rotation, and you probably spend a lot of time on your heel on your right side, or more so. If you are really low arches on your left, it's likely that you spend less time in internal rotation, more time in external rotation, and then when your weight is on your left, you're in your forefoot. So in through the front of your foot. Okay? I guess I should have defined internal and external rotation. We're hanging out for 2 minutes here anyway. So external rotation is like this. And what I mean by that is if you drew a circle on the top of your thigh, the circle's going out when you are externally rotating, and the circle's going in when you're internally rotating, right? It's like that. And internal rotation is just not something that if you're sitting in a chair all the time, or just, I mean, certain patterns of life, you just don't do as often. Okay, we're hanging out. Now we're going to start to fight our way out this way. So I'm pushing my knee into my hand using my hip muscles. And I'm keeping, for me, I have to force myself to stay on my sit bone on my left side. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. And I cheat through my pelvis to do that. And then I end up causing my own issues. Right? I'm squeezing out. And now I'm going to push down through my inner thigh and try to drive my knee closer to the ground. Squeezing my inner thigh to, actually, I guess pull is probably a better word. So my hands are here as a guide to push a little bit deeper, excuse me, but not necessarily force down further. 3, 2, 1, slowly release. All right, okay, coming out. Patrick Sheehan, nice to see you, dude. I haven't seen you in a long time. Hope things are going well. Okay, so we're going to actually come back to the calf raise that we did as a test to see how our body is recognizing that change in weight. So as we go up, you should notice that things feel a little bit more even. The pressure in your foot feels a little bit more even, and you might be less inclined to want to do this as you come up. It should feel easier to come straight up. You're still going to notice a side-to-side difference, but it shouldn't be as drastic, right? And we didn't even do anything specifically to the foot. I mean, we did big toe, but we didn't necessarily do anything big mobilization-wise to the foot. We just focused on hip. And I'm also not having to do this to accomplish it anymore. I'm not crushing in my inner thighs. I'm just going up on my foot. All right, so when you walk, we talked about this. Let's see, can I get the treadmill to start quickly? And I'm doing this barefoot because you can see it more obviously. If you can walk heel, toe, you start adding in the arms. I know this is a very slow pace, so I'm going to speed it up just a tiny bit. Use those arms to guide you through your stride. I know it feels really like I'm swinging my arms a lot, but it's actually pulling me through my foot and allowing me to distribute the weight a little bit more evenly through my foot. If you don't swing your arms at all, and you walk like this, chances are you're stuck back here. Your hips aren't doing what they need to do, and your feet are for sure not going to be able to do what they need to do, because if hips and pelvis don't work, feet can't do what you can't force your feet to do this and not expect some sort of compensation. So heel, toe, reaching through those hands. You'll also notice if you get tired when walking a lot, I know some of you probably don't, but if you get tired when walking a lot and your feet start to get really tired, you're working too hard and you're walking like this. And if you're walking like this, your feet and your calves are going to be working overtime trying to keep you moving. Your feet are going to be completely exhausted by the end of your day. Bogey, thank you for being here. If you have any questions about feet, ankles, hips, this is what we're talking about today. Okay, so getting hips to internally rotate and externally rotate, right? Managing this Zoom is harder than I expected it to be on the laptop. Normally I do Zoom on the computer and then the phone. Okay, so the next thing is standing posture, right? Can you stand with your weight in your heels? Can you allow the backside of your hips to stretch by going backwards? Resting into that heel. If you can rest into that heel without locking your knee, right? We don't want this. This is not a good position for us to rest in. Gentle bend in the knee, just a little bit. I'm not squatting, but a gentle bend in our knee with our weight in our heel. This is a resting posture. You're going to be able to breathe freely in this position, much more so than you would be if you're walking on your tiptoes. So let's do that real quick. Let's take a moment and feel our breath in this. I just went over this with a brand new client yesterday, and the revelation that she had was extreme. So let's go feet squared up, turn the toes out slightly, lock our knees and let our weight go forward. So really like let everything spill forward. Try to take a big breath through your nose. You're going to notice that you don't actually get a great breath, right? So now, square your toes up, relax, pick one side. I'm going to say left because that's where I need to be. And now that I've rested into my, so I've gone not just this, I've gone here. I've relaxed back into that left side, right? Now take a big deep breath. I don't know if you can see it. I can feel it. It feels massive. That feels like a huge breath compared to the one I just took, right? Here, short, tight. Here, big and relaxed. Imagine if you could feel big and relaxed when you're breathing, when you're walking, or even when you're running. Like, how amazing would it be to run and not feel like your body is tensing up and tightening up, right? To just be able to run for, I mean, there are definitely people in the world who can run for hours and hours and hours, and it's just part of their life. And they don't get tired, not just because their cardiovascular system is really efficient, but it's because they have trained their bodies so well to be so light on their feet and their gait, and their breathing is so efficient, it doesn't change massively in order to run. So I want to give you a really obvious example of this. Okay. And I run on occasion, but I don't run a lot. Okay. So we're going to run a little bit, right? We're going to do some more hip strengthening things in just a second. Okay. So I'm doing this barefoot. I don't have my running shoes down here, but this, allowing your body to reach just slightly, I don't need you to be doing this, but this, and breathing normally and easily is far easier than this or this, right? If I go here, I'm right, shoulders are back, I'm striding through my heels, I'm trying really hard. You know what happens? My shoulder hurts doing that. My hips tighten up like crazy. My feet are screaming. And that was 30 seconds. That shift forward of rib cage and striding, reaching through that heel. And it's like this constant falling forward, falling backwards. Your body is working so hard to do that. Whereas the gentle stride here, right? And that ease of breathing into your ribs, because we haven't forced ourselves into this position, is going to make running so much more efficient, so much more effective. And to the point where, like, running on a treadmill, I know is boring, but if you're running outside, being able to run for long distances and enjoy your view is so much more fun when you're not breathing as hard as physically possible. All right. Okay. So our next thing, this is our big strength movement for the day. This is something that I learned from, well, indirectly, an educator in Minneapolis who does studies on athletes. And he's a strength and conditioning coach and um, a researcher. And so he develops these methods and then he tests them with his athletes to see how effective this protocol actually is. And this is called the spring ankle. So I'm trying to find the right thing. I thought I had it, but I think the yoga block might be a little unsteady, and I think the treadmill might move. All right, so in this exercise, we are putting just our forefoot on a stair, right? You're going to ease over that. We're going to drop as low as we can. Our heel is low and our knee as low as we can. And we're going to take all of our weight off of that opposite foot and we're going to put it into our stance leg. What we don't want, though, is that your arch immediately drops, which is why this guy is not going to work because that is far too squishy. Let's see if I can shift to the back of the treadmill and see if that will do just enough. Forgive me for all of the camera angles and changing. I hope that's not making you nauseous. So you want to have something to hang on to for the initial version of this exercise because you don't want to be trying to fight for your life for balance and trying to hold on for strength, right? I want you to be able to hold on to something. Okay, so heel is low, but arch is still engaged. We're shifting forward and we're low and we're holding. We're going to hold for 15 seconds. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whew. What we just combined is hip internal rotation, a little bit of big toe, and pronation in our foot. So we've pronated, but we're not collapsed, right? Because we are shifting our weight forward into our forefoot, our arch is going to come down slightly. As we shift into that spot, and we're holding, we're engaging the muscles on the bottom of our feet, we're engaging the connective tissues on the bottom of our feet, and we're doing it in a way that's safe under our own body weight. There's a way to progress this and add a ton of weight to it. You can use something like a weighted vest, dumbbell, backpack, and you can slowly add weight to that exercise. So that's position 1 of 5. We're only going to go through 1 and 2. So we do the other leg, right? I'll do it on this side so you can kind of see what my body position looks like forward. So I am loading into my forefoot, dropping my heel down, driving my knee forward, and then my left or my right foot is coming up. You can see I'm already shaking. As much as I've done this, this is a position where you're going to your weakest spot in your gait and you're hanging out. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly release and come back. As you do this, don't collapse out of that position because you just put a ton of force through calf, through foot, and through hip. You don't want to just rapidly unload it because it's just not going to feel very good. Okay? Position 1, you can do sets of that, 2 to 3 sets of 15 seconds. You want to get as close to the spot where you feel like you might fall out of it as you can. So if you can be in that position, really in that position for 25, 30 seconds up to a minute, if you can be in that position for a minute, let's say, you can add weight to it and continue to progress. Just enough weight that it drops you back away from a minute. Because if you're running, you're never actually in that position for longer than half a second at the most. Right? So position 2 is going to come back to high foot. So I'll do that from this side. We're going on to big toe, just like at the forefoot, not like Michael Jackson style. We're shifting forward and we're lifting up. We're hanging on. We're holding. We're gripping the ground, but not death gripping. Hold. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Other foot comes down. Unload. Feel good? For those of you who stuck around, I'm guessing it's the Hope kids. I hope you guys are enjoying this. All right, we're shifting forward. We're going to do the other foot, okay? So high on the toe, drop down through the knee, get that heel up as high as you can before your body falls in, right? And we're using our hip internal rotation, the thing we just worked on, to load into our glute to hold us in that position. Sink down and hold. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Other foot comes down. Slowly release. Again, you can repeat that multiple times. Good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you guys are enjoying this. Strong feet is something that you won't, obviously, like if you're walking around all day, every day on hard ground, having strong feet is going to be really important. So in that, those are position 1, position 2. If you wanted to do the other ones, the other ones are still low heel and we're coming up just a little bit. So first position is down here, third position is up here, and then second position is high on the toe and low, fourth position is high on the toe and higher, fifth position is here. I'm up and I'm holding as hard as I can through my big toe, hitting hip extension, knee extension, or just short of, and ankle. And I'm holding this for 15 plus seconds. Oh, lost my balance for a second there. Miles to go. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions, we're coming towards the end, but if you have any questions about feet, ankles, and hips, please let me know. So 5 positions, and I'll put up a post about this a little bit later to kind of go through the sequence of events that we went through today. Working the feet, working the hips, working into that calf work, and then gradually building into that full movement there and squeezing, holding in those positions. Because you're not actually moving out of it, you can work really hard in that position just by holding and breathing and allowing your body to get as comfortable as possible being strong there. And it will make a huge difference in your hips, your calves, your feet, and just how strong you are overall, walking, running, going through the rest of your day. The beautiful part about being stronger is that you don't necessarily, like, the things you do in your day aren't going to be as challenging because your hips and your feet are stronger. So whether if it's running, if it's jumping, if it's, squatting and working out, all of those things require you to be strong, right? But life requires you to be strong too. And if you are not strong enough to get through your normal daily life without getting hurt, adding in a bunch of workouts that are really, really hard, it's like too far, too fast, right? So what we want to do is get you stronger so that the acts of daily life are so easy, and then progressively get you a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger. Because if you can do that slowly, that shift into strength slowly, you're less likely to get injured and end up falling backwards. It's all you want to continue to progress, but you don't want to be going so fast and so hard that you go forward and then back, and then forward and then back, and then forward and then back, and then you end up hurting yourself over and over and over again. That's probably the number one mistake that people make in fitness in general, is too hard, too fast. But the sequence of events that we did was was big toe or toe mobilization, right? The toe wiggles. Then we did through our calf raise to kind of figure out where our strength was. Then we did big toe stretching. We did hip internal rotation. And then we did the calf raise again to check in on how things were progressing. And then from there, we went into our hip, knee, ankle, and foot strengthening exercises, our isometrics. So again, I'm going to put a post together with all of that so that you kind of have an idea of how to cycle through that. And then this is the spot where I talk about the things that I'm doing with my community. So in the school community, it's specifically focused on parents, because as parents, we tend to neglect ourselves. We don't have the time and energy to do the research to figure out how to actually do the exercises that we need to do in order to take care of ourselves and take care of others. And I know that whether the parenting side references resonates or not, being able to take care of yourself so you can take care of others is incredibly important. And that is something that I'm so passionate about. And so that's part of why we've developed this community. And then that way you also don't feel alone, because there's a bunch of other parents in there who are struggling with the same things, right? There are people who are actively trying to feel better and just don't know how to do it. So there's, in the free community, you get a call every week, which is this guy. You have access to general mobility classes. So classes that you can do in as little as 7 minutes to start feeling better right away. Then there are specific problem areas. So hips, shoulders, and low back are the big ones that are in the free community right now. In the paid community, we go through more detail on those things and more intervention options to make sure that you have everything you need to try to troubleshoot your own stuff. You also have in the free community, you can call me and we talk for 15 minutes about your needs, your path through the community. In the paid community, you get 30 minutes where we talk not just about your path through the community and the courses, but also how to develop your training around the mobility stuff you're doing. Because ultimately, my goal with the mobility is like, this is to teach you how to take care of yourself so you can do all the other things. You can work out and become stronger and become healthier so that you can be there for the people who need you to be there, right? That's so incredibly important, to be able to show up for the people who need you by showing up for yourself. There's workouts that you can do around injuries. So there's hip exercise, like a follow along workouts that you can do around specific problems, hips, shoulders, and knee, and low back. We'll be building in more stuff. This foot sequence is all going to go in there, so that you can continue to train yourself, continue to benefit, and not spend all of your time searching for information just to feel a little bit better. I'm going to be signing off in a second. So if you have any questions, now's the time to throw them in the comments, or you can always shoot me a DM and I can help you troubleshoot your specific problem. All right. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. I am an open book. I don't hold back any information. All right. Take care. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll see you on the other side.